So several days I had gotten heat from people that were trying to come after me. Even once I turned my comment section off, they had like created other screen names to come at me, like through a different video comment section. And the reason it was regarding DEI, this critical race theory. This has brainwashed people, and there's no talking to the brainwashed. There isn't. They're indoctrinated. So I want to say the truth about DEI because it's all connected to CRT. It came into America through really, it's been here through affirmative action and all this shit that they use to claim it's a way to keep racism going. So let's first put some history that nobody ever wants to talk about out there, and that's that 360,000 white Americans died fighting for blacks to be free from slavery. That's not even counting the white Americans that were lynched because they stood up against the lynching of black Americans, okay? So they never want to talk about that, though. But they want to pull this reparations shit. And they've done, this is why Trump's pulling all this money out of these universities. Because why go there? When they're not going to educate, not only they're going to lie, and they've been pushing these professors in for a while. So it's affected everything. But in 2020, with the George Floyd event, all the media got on board to show that to you over and over and over again, to brainwash you, to enrage you, to upset people, okay? Then really not tell you the truth, that the autopsy then proved that George Floyd died of a fentanyl overdose. But that went on to cause the summer riots of 2020, and every healthcare or every hospital in Chicago and the surrounding areas, I still have the letter, they sent a letter to all their volunteers, all their employees, everybody. Right after that event, it was so it was like they knew it was coming. And it was 3 pages of every hospital's name that they supported this. And the first line of it said, "We stand with BLM." That then brought in DEI, critical race theory, where it doesn't matter, you're guilty just because you're white. And what's happened in Africa was DEI. It just was started there a while back, before here. So people need to recognize this, because when Donald Trump wants to destroy it, it's because it has deadly consequences. How equity ideology plunged South Africa into inequality and chaos. There is hardly any medical paper or peer-reviewed you can find these days that doesn't have DEI in it. It's deliberately in there. It's to brainwash you, and that's why I turned my comments, because you can't fight with people that have been indoctrinated and don't want to see it. Because that's why I said, no, you just want me dead because I'm white. That's what it is, because that's what the point of this is. The people that were involved in slavery, bringing Africans here for slaves, that was elite whites. Do you know how many white people suffered because of them doing that, though? The white, like the poor. This woman she spent her whole career studying all this and looking death records up, this Dr. Merritt, and she details how an underclass of white people grew in the Deep South. By the 1840s and 1850s, the global demand for cotton had skyrocketed, and slaveholders from the Upper South had sold over 800,000 African Americans to lower South states. The influx of slaves reduced the need for white laborers, whose ranks also grew due to white immigration, particularly from Ireland. As she vividly describes, these whites were landless, jobless, or unemployed, and illiterate, and faced involuntary servitude. So that's what I mean, that everybody has been enslaved. The people and you can sit there and blame every white person, but you're being indoctrinated and brainwashed, which is why Trump is going after the universities. It's all this, just wanting to divide people. So I want to say what this gentleman had said has happened in South Africa, because it should be a reminder of what they have wanted to do here. They just started it earlier, DEI in South Africa. So he says, the overarching truth is that an idea pushed South Africa to the brink. You guys know this idea because it animates the sermons of critical race theorists trying to force you to take the knee and atone for your supposed sins. I'm going to call it the beautiful idea because it is beautiful in a way, but also dangerous. The beautiful idea holds that all humans are born with identical gifts and should turn out to be clones of one another in a just society. Conversely, any situation in which disparity survives is in itself proof of injustice. This is the line promoted by CRT pundits. But what policies took place? Kendai is reluctant to be drawn on this score, and with good reason. He can't name the policies because they don't exist anymore. In your country, all discriminatory laws have been repealed, all forms of overt racism outlawed, and replaced by laws that enforce preferential black access to jobs, housing, and college admissions. So Kendai must insist that an invisible miasma of systemic racism infects white people and propels them to act in ways so subtly racist that most of them aren't even aware they're sick until it's pointed out to them by diversity consultants. Once upon a time, South African revolutionaries would have laughed at this sort of thing. That is, until the mid-1980s, the aims of our freedom struggle were the eradication of capitalism and the creation of a classless society where equity would be enforced at gunpoint by commissars. But in the longer term, the economic consequences were devastating. In addition to paying taxes at Scandinavian levels, South African corporations were required to cede large ownership stakes to black partners, whether or not they brought anything to the table besides black skin and connections in high places. Firms were also required to meet racial quotas in hiring and ensure that management was racially representative, meaning roughly 80% black. Investment dried up, brains drained, the economy stagnated, causing unemployment to surge to 11.4 million today from 3.3 million in 1994. The upshot, utter misery for the underclass, doomed to sit in tin shacks, half-starved, watching the black elite grow fat on the pickings of equity. This was an especially bitter experience for young black people, 63% of whom are now jobless, too broke even for booze and drugs to dull the pain. Last week it proved easy for Zuma and his acolytes to tempt them into the streets with the promise to loot. And so we come to the moral of this story. It's a warning about the practical consequences of ideas like those propounded by Kendai and CRT superstar Robin DiAngelo, who in the name of equity maintains it is racist to talk of work ethic or to expect all workers to show up on time regardless of race. It is exactly these values that have brought South Africa to its knees. We created a society where nothing was expected of blacks save blackness. Honor and diligence were not demanded of our government appointees. Sloth was tolerated. Failures and corruption went unpunished. Blind pursuit of equity began to achieve its opposite, a staggering equality gap among blacks themselves, with a fortunate few benefiting hugely and the masses sinking into abject misery. Politicians who talk about racism talk about it to excuse their own failures. Absolutely. Everybody that uses this, you're racist, this is racist, you're racist. Yeah, it's because you're the failure, and so you use it. It's a perfect quote. Politicians are talking about racism to excuse their own failures. Many black South Africans who opposed this lawlessness were out in force last week, manning roadblocks. They do not see racism as the problem. They see what's happened. But he went on to say here, I can hear their voices on the radio, clamoring for change. By the sound of it, they want a country where human outcomes are determined by the content of one's character.